What's up YouTube, and welcome to episode 2 of Chatter 13. And in this episode what I'm going to do is talk about Dezaras, arguably the lead character in this season. Dezaras is my own personal character that I first created when I started playing GTA Online, and I have this thing where I like to create my own characters. I like to create anything I can, whether it's on the WWE games or DC Universe Online, or whether it's on GTA or anything else. And I'll be honest, GTA 5 was my first Grand Theft Auto game. I didn't play any of the others. I've played a bit of GTA 4 since, but I never really played the GTA games because they never allowed me to create my own character. Yes, you could redress certain characters and give them different hairstyles and clothes and stuff like that, but they were always a set character with a set narrative and their own set of rules that come with that. And instead of playing the GTA games, I found myself playing the Saints Row games. Because yes, there was a set narrative, mostly. There were certain branching elements where you could make different choices. But the key thing was there you could create your own character. And even throughout the sequels, they'd give you the option of changing the look of your character, like Saints Row 1. You ended that and you're in prison. Saints Row 2, you're having plastic surgery and you can either try and recreate your look from Saints Row 1 or you can create a completely different look. And those are the things I like about video games, the customization, because I am a creator and I'm a storyteller, and creating your own character gives you more freedom because you go into certain situations with your own mindset. One of the criticisms about GTA 4 was that you play as Nico Bellic, but his motivations and actions didn't always match your own, and there was sometimes contradictory. When you create your own character, there's no contradiction there, really. And that's what I like about customization and character creation and stuff like that, and that's why I shied away from the GTA games, the earlier ones, until GTA 5, when I got to create what I consider to be the truest representation of myself out of any version of myself I've portrayed on my YouTube channels, whether that be Dezaras the wrestler or Dezaras the superhero. Yes, they have elements of my personality and my morality and that kind of thing, but Dezaras in 13 has pretty much all of it, except the criminal bollocks, of course. For example, in some WWE related content, if I were to use voice, I would use a different accent. Maybe go deeper to match the character. DCUO, I went with a different accent for Dezaras, while still holding a lot of my personality and quirks. Like Dezaras, I am prone to using the word bitch a lot. But with Dezaras in 13, I was able to just be myself, my own voice, my own accent, and nothing changed. Future episodes, you might see the Dezaras type voice modulator in the hockey mask, just for certain situations. But by all intents, this is the most accurate representation of myself on my YouTube channel. Other than vlogs, obviously. I mean, digital, like cinematic TV type kind of version of myself. Few differences. The tattoos. I don't have tattoos. I can't drive. I'm not 6 feet tall. But that's what I like about games like this. They let you be what you want to be, while still being yourself in a lot of ways. I think I've pretty much covered the personality, haven't I? It's pretty much me, with a few different things. And so we'll move on to looks, like outfits, appearance, that kind of thing. The version that you see in the first When Bastard the Twats scene, where he robs the convenience store, that was my off the plane look. That was the look I chose. when I first created my character, got off the plane and did all that shit with Lamar. And I figured, let's go back to that. Let's use that as the first look. Like, in-game, he lands in Los Santos looking like that. In 13, he would land in Los Santos looking like that. Obviously, the look changes. And he goes from having the spiky hair to having facial hair and the shaved head, which grows back a little bit later, but then he shaves it again in Chapter 7. All looks that somewhat resemble my own. I had the hair at the time when I created the character. I shave my head from time to time. I like to grow my facial hair. It's not as good as his facial hair, but it'll do, I guess. But yeah, so he moves into a more biker look for Chapter 2. He's got the biker cut and the t-shirt and the jeans, shaved head, motorcycle. It might seem on the surface like a bit of a rapid departure, but I do actually next year have a movie coming. It's Dezaras Chapter 0, which delves more into that time period from when he landed in Los Santos to the events of Chapter 2. How he comes to the city, what motivates him to rob that store, and what follows after, up until the point where he meets Scorn in Chapter 2. So that's coming next year, hopefully, and I'm really excited to be working on that. Yeah, Chapter 2 and 3, he has that standard biker look. And again, like I said in the Moss video, it changes up a little bit. He wears a jacket in Chapter 3, wears the cut in Chapter 2. He also wears a makeshift post-op outfit, because you can't buy the post-op outfits or any outfits like that in the game. So I had to make do with what I could use. But it's one of those things where I like to change it up a little bit. And Chapter 5, you see him wearing more, well, 4 and 5 actually. Chapter 4, you see him in that When Bastard the Twats construction site gear with the face paint and the leathers, jacket and pants, which was that look came about when I was messing around with Ben on GTA. This is back when we were part of the old crew, and Ben was like, "Oh, let's because Ben does the UWA, or he did do the UWA. I did RCW, the custom WWE 2K feds." And he was like, "Oh, let's dress up as our UWA and RCW characters." And I was like, "Oh, I'll dress up as Dezaras," and he dressed up as Radicaz. It really wasn't that hard to do, surprisingly, which made the Chapter 7 reveal about where he got the inspiration for Dezaras from a lot easier to do. Because I found a face paint that was kind of very evocative of Dezaras, and the leathers, Dezaras. At times, his street attire would be leathers, biker leathers. The wrestler would wear those as his street attire. I don't think I've ever got around to showing that. Maybe on the Xbox 360 version of RCW, but not in the current gen. It was very easy to come up with that Dezaras look. And when I was making the series, I was thinking, well, if I use the creation look for the start and then evolve into the face-painted bastard look and then move on to the hockey mask, there's sort of like a natural progression there, because he starts off as just this young guy who will get to the age in a bit, because in 2009 Dezaras was older than I am now, and I felt it was a natural progression. He just got off the plane, he's landed in Los Santos, his young guy just looking for a job, looking to make money so he can get his son back, basically. And then he runs with this crew, he meets Scorn, he runs with the crew, he has a run-in with the crew which ended acrimoniously, his time there, which also had consequences for Benji and Scorn. And he doesn't just feel anger towards the old crew, but he feels guilt as well because of the way his friends were treated, and he goes and paints his face and completely fucking lashes out in chapter 4. I was talking about this with Bruce earlier because Bruce was saying that he wouldn't mind doing like a Purge type episode, and I consider that chapter 4, Dizzy is Dead, I consider that my Purge episode. And then chapter 5, we see him meet Little D, and who we later find out is his son. And we also see the first appearance of a hockey mask when they both go into the Fleecer Bank dressed as Jason, and that would obviously trigger the inspiration for his main look in chapter 7. Because Dezaras hates hockey. It's the Friday the 13th series that inspired him. Which obviously I put my own spin on the Friday the 13th stuff as well with the penance clip that you see in chapter 7. But yeah, I do want to touch on Dizzy is Dead a bit. The reason he was called Dizzy was that was what the crew called me, because they probably couldn't say Dezaras and they couldn't be asked to say Dez. So they thought, oh, we'll just fucking call him Dizzy. And that, it didn't last long. It lasted for my tenure in the crew, which was only a few months. The whole point of Dezaras going out alone in that episode stems from the fact that as a story, it works because he's out there unleashing frustration, he's venting, he's getting shit off his chest. But also because he hadn't really done that much, especially in chapter 2. He went out and killed a guy with a hatchet, Scorn set fire to a bunch of bastards, the Bollockses, while Dezaras took care of Ronaldo's spears. I love coming up with names for fucking NPCs and generic characters like that. Yeah, Scorn was definitely the MVP of the funeral run. And Dezaras certainly wasn't, because he killed a guy. He killed a civilian, which wasn't intended. We were recording that, and we were going through the mission, and all were fine and dandy, and then that stupid bitch T-boned me, and I ploughed into that guy on the pavement. Now, off camera, I have no problem running down a pedestrian, because it's only a pedestrian in-game, isn't it? I'm not really running. I wouldn't do that in real life. If that happened to me in real life, I was in a situation where I killed a guy like that, I would feel fucking terrible. So what this did was, it was sort of, in a twisted way, a happy accident, because it allowed me to add more depth and add an extra layer of complexity to Dezaras. Because he'll happily go out and fucking slice Ronaldo's spear skull open with an axe. He'll happily go out there and kill Kim Ballers or Vargos or the Lost, but he won't harm a civilian. And it allowed me that opportunity to show that he really does carry the guilt of that he maybe does overthink things and overfeel things sometimes, because as opposed to Scorn, and Scorn was a brilliant contrast for that, because Scorn is a lot like Wilf in the way that I'm a lot like Dezaras, or Dezaras is a lot like me. Obviously, Scorn wouldn't go around killing people willy-nilly like that either, and I'm sure if Wilf did kill someone in real life, he'd feel bad, but he comes across as more emotionally level-headed than I do, and is a lot more calm about situations than I am, and it was a nice contrast. Like, Scorn was like, and Wilf's also played the game longer than me, so I kind of played that in, like, as Wilf's seen a lot more of this shit in the game, Scorn's seen a lot more of that in his life. So Scorn is more battle-scarred, maybe, more weary in terms of, he's been there, done that, possibly. And Dezaras is still pretty new to this, and he doesn't like killing innocents. He won't do it if he can get away with it, and in this instance he did, and he felt bad about it. Which triggered this little arc where you'd see him at the end of 2, 3, and 4 at the cemetery, paying his respects, making his apologies, just generally beating himself up over shit, which is another thing I do. I beat myself up over stuff. So it was a way to integrate that aspect of my personality into the character as well. Like I said, it was a happy accident, because if the mission had gone smoothly and I hadn't hit that pedestrian, and then there wouldn't be that added layer of complexity to Dezaras, that added conscience. Because as well as being the president of Chapter 13, he's also the conscience of Chapter 13. It's his heart and his compassion and his integrity, his moral compass, that prevents Chapter 13 from becoming the Lost, or becoming the Angels of Death, or the Vargas, or the Ballers, or any of those other gangs that will just kill you if you get in the way, no matter who you are. And it presented me an opportunity to show that, and to... Because here's my thing, and this is something I suggested to Calvin a while ago, because Calvin suggested a way for Chapter 13 and the Death Row Mafia families, as they're currently called, to interact. And he was like, well, what if the Death Row Mafia played a part in Dezaras' death? And I immediately shot it down, because I believe they are planning on doing their own stuff. And my mentality is, whenever you're creating a series, or whenever you're telling a story, the protagonists, especially in this case, because it's probably going to be the case with whatever they do, but it's also the case in 13, the protagonists, Moss aside, are criminals, they're outlaws. They gun people down. Yes, the enemy, bad people, they steal, they sell drugs. Not hard drugs in 13's case, but they still do criminal things. And for me, it is key to make the protagonists relatable and likable. Because if you go around with characters and you try and make the show, and your protagonists, the people, the characters, the viewers are supposed to relate to and go on this journey with, and you make them a bunch of dickheads, then to me it isn't going to work. And that's why I shot down Calvin's idea of his crew being involved in the death of Dezaras, because if they want to go off and branch out and do their own series, then they're immediately hindered by the fact that they killed the protagonist of my series. They are already antagonists. And that, to me, is a key story element. The characters have to be likable. And I couldn't... If I was a fan of 13 and not the creator, talking objectively here, if I was a fan of 13 and then I started watching their series, I don't know if I'd find myself liking those characters, because they would be the ones that killed Dezaras. And so it's important to me to have likable characters, or characters that the audience can engage in and invest in. And I think we pulled that off on 13 with the personalities, and added little things like that moral compass, that moral code, that no innocent shall come to harm. Because to me, those are crucial things. When you're doing a story about criminals or outlaws, there has to be something that the audience likes. If there isn't, then it's a failure. And so the happy accident of me killing that civilian allowed me to add that extra little level of detail and add an extra likability factor to the club. Because before, we were just riding on our personalities, no pun intended. Because that was another key thing. I played Des and Scorn's banter like I play mine and Wilf's banter. The way we talk in that series is pretty much how we talk in real life. We just feed off each other so well. And we're both very like-minded in terms of our humour and the stuff we'll come out with. And so that was another thing that fed into it. these characters are criminals or outlaws at best, but they're likable criminals and outlaws, and they're in some ways funny. And so that helps the audience engage in these characters and feel more for their cause. If the Death Row Mafia did their series, or if anybody does a series, I'm not going to single out the Mafia for this because I have no idea what their plans are, so it's unfair of me to say that. I'm just going based on Calvin's pitch, so I'm going to erase that from my mind. If anybody does a story or a series and the characters aren't likable, then you've got a problem. You can redeem those characters over time, sure. But if you don't plan on doing that, then you're fucked, basically. And so, anybody that's doing a series out there, they need to create compelling protagonists, likable protagonists, or at least something to like about the protagonist. I mean, let's look at a good example, would probably be Cole Phelps from L.A. Noire. And I've mentioned L.A. Noire before. You play the game and he's a good cop. And he is dedicated to his job, and he is all about the justice. He is as much about the justice as Starsaber is about the Earth. But he also has a checkered past. His flashbacks that show him in the military, or the Navy, or the Marines, or whatever it was. And he was a dick then. And then he goes and fucking shags that other woman behind his wife's back. And then he sacrifices himself at the end of the game. Spoiler alert if you haven't played this nearly 10-year-old game, by the way. But it's kind of like bad, good, bad, good. With Phelps, he's got the, in the Marines he was a twat. He was a dedicated cop and dedicated to the law and bringing the right people to justice and protecting the innocent. He wasn't a good husband, or by proxy father, because his wife kicked him out. But then he gave his life to help his people. Like, I think Kelso was one of them at the end, someone who he was especially harsh on in the Marines. He gave his life to save his. And so there's a complexity there. There are bad elements to the character, but there are also good elements to the character. Cole Phelps has something you can get behind. Now, I wish to hell L.A. Noire would have given you the choice to either shag Elsa or not shag Elsa. But, yeah, that's done. That's in the past. I do plan on at some point maybe streaming L.A. Noire, case by case. And I'll have a lot to say on the matter then, if I do that. But that's the way I see it in terms of creating good characters, especially when the characters are criminals. They do illegal shit. There needs to be something, because if you've just got a bunch of criminals going around doing criminal shit and not doing anything to engage the audience or endear themselves to the audience, they're like, oh yeah, I killed a granny and I liked it. No. I mean, at least Captain Marvel only punched a granny. We don't even know if she liked it. But stuff like that, where the characters are just, they'll do the bad shit and pat themselves on the back. I do want to reiterate again, I'm not saying Death Row Mafia does that, because they don't. I've chatted with those lads and they're all solid guys. I'm just basically going off Calvin's pitch, which I said I wouldn't do, but it kind of... If the Death Row Mafia had killed Dezaras and then spent their series patting themselves on the back over it, I wouldn't like it. Not just because they killed my character, but because there's nothing to like about them. Oh yeah, we killed Dezaras, huh? Oh yeah, yours. No. So I went off on one a bit there, didn't I? I've clearly got a lot more to say about Dezaras and his character development than Moss. Moss is a simpler one, really, because he's a civilian private investigator. He's not engaging in criminal activity. Maybe the odd trespassing bit every now and then, but that's about it. Dezaras has killed people. I think I was talking about Dizzy is Dead, wasn't I? And I went right off on one about morality and ethics and how to frame a series and stuff. Sorry. So yeah, chapter 2. Scorn was the MVP of that funeral run. We played it a couple of times practicing, and we got to the church, and there were still bastards to kill, but because Wilf got out in the middle of the mission on the street, killed a load of people, there wasn't anyone to kill at the church, bar a couple. I think I got one person in, and that isn't the guy that I ran over. Maybe a couple others on the road, but it kind of like, I didn't have a lot to do. Chapter 3, I had a bit more to do, post-op stuff when Bastards and Twats live. I do plan on releasing the uncut version of that. The reason I trimmed it down so much was because it's a fucking 15-minute thing. There were 10 waves of Merryweather. Like, what was it, 68 bastards we killed? And that isn't even exaggerated for entertainment. That was how much Merryweather came after us. And obviously the resupply. Did my bit in there, but I kind of felt like Scorn was carrying the team a bit. And so I made the point to not use Scorn in the combat in Chapter 4 and just go it alone. And yes, I had help from either Benji or Northy, depending on your perspective, on what you choose to be canon. That is up to you, the Benji cut or the Northy cut. I'm not going to tell you which one, that is up to you. Other than the Vespucci Canals gang attack, I did all of them on my own. I maybe died a couple of times, but I edited it nicely. I wanted Dezaras to prove himself, and I kind of wanted to prove myself as well, because like I said, it wasn't just Scorn that was the MVP of those previous missions, it was Wilf as well. He knew what he was doing more. I was doing what I could, but not really getting much of a chance to. So this was my proving ground, if you will. And man, that episode was actually quite difficult to shoot and edit because it did stir up a lot of old memories, and I'm emotionally damaged as it is. Depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, and it was a very hard episode to do. It was a rewarding episode in the end, but during that process, it took its toll. But I think in the long run it was helpful because it helped me I got through that, and I think in getting through that I properly got through the old issues I had and got rid of any animosity. So it was therapeutic. Killed about 100 bastards. Took that to get over it, but yeah. It's interesting, that little discussion, the topic I made earlier about compelling characters, and if they're all just like directionless and have no worthy character traits. The Lost are actually a good case for that, because Lost and Damned, you had Johnny Klebitz, who was the more moral and ethical character against other ones like Billy and that. Yet in this game, Johnny's dead and the Lost are just nomadic and wild and feral and leaderless. And I wish the Lost were portrayed more as more of a force and not just a group of bastards to kill every now and then. But, you know, Johnny's dead, Billy's dead, who's leading them? That's something I might want to address later on. Because if the state of the Lost stays the same as it is, then that gives me a bit of freedom to maybe come up with something. But not yet. So yeah, that's that. And in terms of whatever I was talking about character, wasn't I? And developing good characters for, especially when you're faced with the fact that the characters are criminals. It's not like Dark Savior, where Dezaras is not only likable, but he's a superhero as well, and he saves people. This is a whole different kettle of fish altogether. Now, I've gone through the looks and the natural progressions of it, and we had the face paint in Chapter 5 again, but got to grow his hair out a little bit as well, as if like he'd escaped from his clubhouse, and then just he bounced, like I said, he bounced around, grew his hair out a bit, maybe to deflect attention a little bit. Then he puts the face paint on again, which I forgot in the Fleecer job, when you go and steal the Kuruma, you have to wear a mask, so that was a moot point, really. That's quite pointless. But yeah, it is, excuse me, what it is. And then, chapter 6, we're going to go like something, and it's another thing about character and fleshing out a character. And I feel like I've done a good job in fleshing out the Dezaras character, either by coincidence or by design. Because you see him in chapter 6, and there's the ironic line now in chapter 5, I'm not your dad, I can't tell you what to do. Then next episode, yeah, Little D's his dad. Son, Dezaras is Little D's dad. And all of a sudden he doesn't want it anymore. He wants to be a dad. He doesn't want to be a criminal. Everything he was doing, the drug sales and the contracts and all that shit, was all to get money to support Bradley when he finally got him. And Bradley found him. And now Dezaras feels he doesn't have to do it anymore. Yet Little D wants to. Because it's like Northy said in chapter 7, that's the only version of Dezaras that Bradley knows. He doesn't know the guy that wants to be a dad. He only knows the guy with the face paint that goes around killing bastards and generally being a badass. And there's that. You see him in 6 and 7, like 5, 6. It's kind of like I've got two different little arcs in the first half of the season for Dezaras. You've got his 2, 3, and 4, where you see his vicious side, yet you also see his compassionate side, and you see the guilt he carries with the grave site, and how he cares for other people. And then, but you see that from the perspective of a friend, and as someone who's new to this. 5, 6, and 7, you see him as a father, even though he doesn't know he's Little D's father in chapter 5. You see those, because he's an older guy with the young protege, so to speak, and he's trying to guide him and mentor him and help teach him what he knows. And it's an interesting little situation there, because everything he's gone through in 2, 3, and 4, he doesn't want Bradley having to go through. So he tries to walk away from it, but he finds himself drawn back into it. And he's watching the Friday the 13th clip. He goes out and he's coming around to it because Bradley went off and did the gang attack, and Des had to save him in his pajamas. There's little things like that where I think, whether he wants to admit it or not, he misses it. He'd missed it. He went out there in his pajamas and they took care of business. He wasn't happy that his son went out there so recklessly, but there was that part where he was like, yeah, I haven't lost a beat, I can still do this. And so his wrestling with that choice of walking away and being a father, or carrying on and being a father. And the irony of the situation is that walking away and being a father would probably be the worst choice in terms of his relationship with his son. So there's like that little interesting arc there about what really is the best way to be a father to this kid. And it isn't the conventional way. The best way to be a father to this kid is to keep doing what you're doing. Just keep being Dezaras. And so I'll kind of like that little twist on that scenario there. Because he tried to do the right thing, but the actual right thing is the wrong thing. It's a nice little contradiction, if you want to call it that. And I kind of dig that. And then we see the hockey mask at the end of chapter 7. And that was going to go a whole lot differently. I will talk more about that in my episode recap of Formation. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it there. But suffice it to say, he's committed to the cause. He's got the mask. They've formed the club proper. They've got the name. Just missing the patch. The patch is in the titles. The patch is coming. Next episode, chapter 8. But yeah, I feel like, well, this has gone on 35, 36 minutes now, and I've talked a lot about it. I hope I've covered all the main elements. There's probably a lot more that I've missed, but just because this is a spotlight on Dezaras doesn't mean it's the full spotlight. Like I said with the Moss one, I'll probably come back and do another one at some point. They'll most likely will be a part 2 for Moss. There'll be a part 2 for each of the characters and show how they evolve over the series. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave it there because, like I said, 36 minutes. That's gone on long enough. I don't want to go any longer because that means you've got to sit through that shit. Thank you all for watching, not just this, but all my other content on my channel, whatever content it may be. I appreciate it, love you all, appreciate the support, thank you very much, and you shall see me next time.